This is the fifth video for April 23rd. So consider again the example of Snapchat dysmorphia. According to Jasmine Ferdouli, people often compete online to present carefully curated versions of themselves, presenting increasingly realistic-looking versions of themselves and creating an airbrushed online environment that's increasingly divorced from reality. Deepfakes and AI-generated misinformation are becoming easier to manufacture and spread across the internet. The omnipresence of false imagery and false information can be epistemically harmful for two reasons. First, more people are likely to believe false information, and second, it will become more difficult to trust in the reliability of any information. We've already considered the potential for deepfakes to manipulate and deceive people. According to Taraji Ibrahimi at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, Lausanne, the increasing quality of deepfakes means that even the most experienced eyes can be fooled. Ibrahimi forecasts that within years, even machines will not be able to tell what is real and what is fake. If deepfakes become omnipresent, it will become more difficult to trust our senses. However, perhaps the larger worry is that it will put all information into question. When the people of Gabon didn't see their president for months in 2018 and amidst speculation that he was dead, video was released of him alive. However, this only raised doubts about whether the video was a deepfake, and a week later the military launched an unsuccessful coup, citing the video's justification. The fear of AI was enough to prompt such a response. As we discussed when considering plausible deniability, if there is room to create doubt, and if there is incentive to do so, it will be easy to bring legitimate information into doubt or to avoid taking responsibility because anything could be falsified. As the law professor Danielle Citron notes, when nothing is believable, the mischief doer can say, well, you can't believe anything. It isn't hard to imagine the loss of public trust that might accompany such an onslaught of artificial content. In 2023, Microsoft's news service was criticized when a travel article that many believed had been written by AI recommended that Ottawa tourists visit the local food banks. Microsoft claims the article was generated through a combination of algorithmic techniques with human review. With many publishers switching to AI-generated content, it will become hard to tell what sources of information, if any, are trustworthy. Moreover, there is some evidence that social media powered by AI produces an abundance of information that could narrow our collective attention span. One study found that the increased production and consumption of content leads to a rapid exhaustion of limited attention resources. Is it possible that AI may not only undermine our senses, but also make us worse inquirers overall? It is difficult to know how concerned we should be without a greater empirical understanding of the long-term effects of AI on our epistemic faculties. Nevertheless, there are obvious cases where AI has the potential to undermine our confidence in our ability to find the truth and to make sense of what we are seeing. These are epistemic harms, but are they ethically wrong? Under what conditions, if the omnipresence of artificially generated content in mass media does undermine our epistemic faculties and confidence, does it constitute an injustice against us? does the ways in which AI can affect human behavior presents ethical concerns. AI can manipulate people's behaviors in ways that we consider ethically problematic. But ethical concerns can also arise when AI's attempts to manipulate AI for their own ends. This raises several questions. If an AI can manipulate our behavior, should they be designed to make us more ethical? What are the problematic effects when AI starts to manipulate human behavior? Is it wrong to attempt to manipulate an algorithm? And what happens when groups of people attempt to do so? We've discussed micro-targeting and an algorithm's ability to create addictive impulses, as well as how algorithms can distort our perceptions and potentially make it difficult to distinguish fiction from reality. However, AI can affect human behavior in other ways. When an algorithm is based on a model, it creates a system of rules that determine what the output will be. When real-world consequences depend on the outputs, the rules of the model begin to change the way people behave, and an incentive is created for the people to manipulate that system in their favor. For example, in California, there were reports that police were playing loud copyrighted music while responding to a stolen vehicle report that they were recorded blasting songs owned by Disney. The presumed reason was that any footage taken of the incident and then posted to social media would be automatically flagged and taken down by an algorithm to avoid copyright infringement on the song, thus making it difficult to hold the police accountable for anything that might be recorded. In another case, there had been concern that TikTok's algorithm is encouraging a mob-like mentality to investigate perceived villains on the platform. Given that AI has the potential to manipulate our behavior, should we use AI to manipulate behavior for good? Would it be okay for an algorithm to manipulate our behavior to achieve an ethical goal, even if it wasn't your goal? In The Ethical Algorithm, Kearns and Roth consider whether it is better for an algorithm to work for the best interest of the user or to advance the greater good. Imagine, for example, that everyone uses a navigation app that attempts to provide the most efficient direction to limit the driving time of each individual driver as much as possible. The possibility here is that each person pursuing the most selfish option for themselves could make everyone worse off, as each person's navigation app sends everyone down the same roads, ultimately making traffic more congested. But what if some of these people took slightly less efficient routes? There may be different directional paths to take to get through a city, some more efficient and some less. An algorithm could collect the driving data of each user using the app and compute a coordinated solution. If some people could be diverted to less efficient paths, it would minimize the average driving time across the entire city rather than trying to minimize individual driving time for each user. In other words, an algorithm can be designed to make you act either selflessly or selfishly. It isn't hard to imagine algorithms being created with the intention of trying to change our behavior to promote collective or coordinated social actions for a perceived moral good. Algorithms could be used to manipulate traffic in order to reduce carbon emissions, manage supply chains, or help promote public health outcomes. But people might take issue if an algorithm is manipulating them to act in a way that isn't in their individual best interest. Why would anyone follow directions if they knew they were not efficient? If people were aware that an app was prioritizing the collective benefit over the individuals, they might be tempted to cheat and ignore the directions. How transparent should the service be about why you are receiving the driving directions you're getting? As someone using the service, do you have a right to know, or does the potential collective reward outweigh the desire to be transparent about the process? Algorithmic manipulation of human behavior has the potential to produce ethical goods, but it can also produce ethical problems as well. Consider the various metrics that inform the U.S. News and World Report rankings of the best colleges. These rankings are determined according to background assumptions about what constitutes educational excellence, using metrics such as SAT scores of the student body, student-to-teacher ratios, acceptance rates, alumni donations, faculty publications, among others. Given that the model uses these metrics as proxies for educational success, and given that people take the rankings seriously, it incentivizes schools to improve these specific metrics. But once one understands this, one can also see how such metrics might be manipulated. A school might try to hire recent graduates as temporary workers to make their job placement figures look better. Another school might hire prominent researchers who will do little work at the school, but whose publications will include the school's name in the affiliation, thus boosting the school's score. Even though the system created was supposed to reflect education quality using specific metrics, once those metrics are known, groups attempt to manipulate them, and in and of themselves, the metrics might be good measures of success, but they become problematic when people attempt to manipulate them. As O'Neill explains, when you create a model from proxies, it is far simpler for people to game it. This is because proxies are easier to manipulate than the reality that they represent. Okay, so we'll continue this discussion in the 6th and last video for April 23rd.